Hi, we are all very welcome to another of our lives for Empower ADHD. And I am really thrilled to be joined by Abbie Robinson, who is a fourth year PhD psychology student. And I came across Abbie at a wonderful talk that she did as a second year student. Um, when you talked about the the topic that you had your that you were doing your PhD on and that journey. And maybe I'll let you share, Abbie, what that journey entailed in terms of what your PhD is on, and then what you discovered while you
hmm
were your PhD. So over to you.
One of my favorite stories. So I started my PhD in 2022, and I was looking at ADHD in adults and perceptual decision making. So started that off, and I'd taken a year off from education after my master's, so I was getting back into the swing of things. And with the PhD, I found it was, you know, a lot more independent, and you're not, going to classes, and you don't have set deadlines for essays. Like, you have to build up that own structure. So at first, I thought I was just kind of having teething problems with, getting into the groove of things and just not being able to find my feet fully. And it was like, why can't I write? Why am I really struggling to do this? And as the year progressed on, um, I began identifying a lot more with the ADHD traits that me and my supervisors were talking about in our meetings. And I was, thinking, is this because, I've just read a lot about ADHD now? And they're just sounding more familiar to me. And I was then like, no, I feel like these are things I actually experience. Um, so then at the very end of my first year, um, I was kind of in a bad place with motivation and, feeling like I hadn't got enough done. So I was like, I don't know if I can do this PhD. I think I need to just drop out and just give up because I'm not able for it. And then it kind of started to dawn on me that it wasn't, just me and I wasn't able for it was a lot of sort of ADHD traits creeping in when I was thrown into this independent sort of set your own schedule, you're your own accountability sort of environment. So I ended up going and getting a diagnosis at the end of my first year.
So what an irony that this was your topic. And as you say, you were so familiar with those traits. And that is actually an experience of many people because ADHD, the awareness has increased about it. Now, obviously, you are much more intimately intertwined with it because of your PhD topic. But because people are hearing much more about what ADHD is, that's actually, I think, quite a common experience of going, am I just matching what I'm feeling to these traits? When in fact, if you are starting to identify in that way, there's a very strong chance you need to pursue this, right?
Exactly, because so many of, ADHD traits are, something that everyone experiences to a certain degree. But if you're identifying with them so strongly that you're saying, oh my God, this is happening to me every day and this is interfering with my life, then yes, definitely something to consider, which is exactly what I was doing. And sort of just like applying them to me and going, okay, I think this is a little bit more than I just procrastinate from time to time.
Oh, and what I loved, so I came across you, as I said, it was actually at a talk. You were speaking at a conference, and it was a women's celebrating Women's Day, and celebrating women with ADHD. And I was so drawn to your story. And yes, for sharing it was wonderful, but, and it was very evident that, yes, all those traits were tripping you up, the executive function challenges, the managing time, the prioritizing, the decision making. What's my topic going to be? What am I going to do? So you were getting tripped up by all of those traits, which many people, in the workplace get tripped up with, in study get tripped up with, or in any new change of environment where they're now exposed and left, to their own devices in some way. So that's a very shared experience. What I loved, though, was the creativity and the flair and the way in which you told the story. And that to me embodied so much of the amazing qualities of ADHD, which are just not celebrated enough. Um, and you bring so much humor to how you tell the story and the presentation that you did, and it was just really lasting. So that's I really wanted to share this story with a wider audience again. So that was very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful story. I know you have some slides from that presentation that maybe do you want to share? Because then we'll go through
Absolutely.
your journey with those.
So I will just pop this up now. Um, that all okay?
Fabulous, yes.
Perfect. So yeah, I definitely has the age-old experience of, realizing that you had ADHD, a later diagnosis. And I think after I struggled so much in the first year of the PhD, after I realized that ADHD, that might be the traits that I was like having problems in my PhD with. And I sort of thought, okay, after diagnosis, everything's going to be rosy. It's going to be like light switch flicked and it's totally fine. So I guess what I realized a lot after my diagnosis was that that wasn't the case. And I think it was, facing the fact that after, I think I was 24 or 25, but 20 odd years of um building bad habits, that getting a diagnosis or medication wasn't going to change them overnight. So that was quite a big pill to swallow. So I think with um, these slides, if I can get them to change, there we go. Um, I think it's a lot of, you don't hear as much as what happens after. It's kind of, you got your diagnosis, big celebration, and then you're left sort of floundering in that for a bit. And I found that there was a lot of change after. So I kind of expected I would go from sad to just happy. I understand everything that's, going on now, and that will be enough. And I expected, going from total burnout with work to being the absolute greatest student in the world and so productive. And I would be the first person ever to finish my PhD in a month. Like, it was unreasonable. Um, and I also expected, all the mess, all the executive functioning and the tasks that I struggle with, that they would all just, everything would be prim and proper. But that's really just not who I am as a person. I do like a bit of organized mess. So I think it was kind of, me expecting me and my whole person to change.
Wow.
Um,
And that's something we hear a lot, with coaching of people come very often they've come a bit of time after they've had the diagnosis and they've had this expectation. And then but none of that's changing, and so it's a lifetime of habits, it's a lifetime of stories that have been told to ourselves, and a lifetime very often of a sense of mistrust in our ability moving forward. That, I love the world, the certificate, the optimism that this is everything, it's a whole new me.
Exactly, exactly. I was like, right, we have ADHD and that's it, and here's the label on it. Whereas really that label and the like further understanding of myself was the only thing that had changed. Like I was still the same person, that I still had things to work on like everyone.
Okay.
Um, and then I guess we'll go into what actually happened, which was, a roller coaster of ups and downs. It was a lot, of reevaluating myself and my actions and doing a lot of like reflection. So there were good and bad. So I had to, continue to have to gather the strength to reach out for support, but it was also helpful that now I could go, oh, I'm not, just not doing something because I'm lazy and I can't organize anything. I could go, okay, I'm struggling with this aspect of ADHD and I need to tell someone so they can help me get through it. Which is hard to do, but ultimately worth it. Um, I kind of also had that sense of loss of who I could have been with an earlier diagnosis, which I find is, quite common in people who are diagnosed later. That there's that what if, and what if I was diagnosed as a child, and would I still be struggling with X, Y, and Z, or would I have gotten more help, and it took me a while to kind of come to terms with, yeah, maybe things would have been a little bit different. But ultimately you kind of have to go, okay, well, I know now, so at least that's not more years of, having to what if. Like you can only go with what you know now. And I think I got my diagnosis as well at a time where, my symptoms were really presenting quite strongly than they had been before. Um, and that was what kind of made me realize, especially, with girls where it's much more internal. And I find it's hard to, identify those things within yourself because that's your own baseline.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you
What also
assume
strikes
everyone
me,
else is
yeah,
like
well,
that.
what also
Yeah,
strikes me in there is there is this reflection back, which I hear so often from people of the, they do wonder, well, what I could have done, what I could have been. And yet we very often don't look to, well, look what you have done.
exactly,
Look where you are.
exactly,
Where you are is possibly where you would have been. Who knows? Where you
exactly.
are is a great place. It is just sometimes in our own heads that journey there has brought a lot of internal conflict, and judgment on ourselves. So it's shedding that part.
Exactly. It's that, negative like connotation that you have with being like, oh, but I don't feel like I'm able to do this, or I why am I struggling with this when no one else does? Where you're seeing those internal emotions rather than the bigger sort of picture of, oh my God, look at all I've done.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and really important to reflect on.
Um, Yeah, I think we've already then touched on that one, the negative ways I've coped with my symptoms while living undiagnosed. So again, those 20 years of building up terrible habits. I think especially this rang through in terms of, college and school and the PhD because, I did like quite well in school and in my undergrad and my master's, and that wasn't with me, studying all day, every day, and having this great routine. It was me getting that dopamine boost like the day before the assignment's due and being able to throw that all together. And then obviously I get to the PhD, and it's now not, a monthly deadline, it's a 4 year hard deadline. So when you're in your first year and your deadline's 4 years away, it's quite hard to get that dopamine kick. So it was definitely difficult identifying that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's also a shared experience for people, in workplace as well, particularly when they're in work period of time and those boring tasks that just have to be done, and the expenses and the whatever it is. It's just that's time just is stretched out there and can be very hard to get.
Exactly. Any task like that, be it like work, school, wherever you are, it's, if it's that boring task, I end up convincing myself, I don't want to do this today. I can definitely get this done in 5 minutes, so I'll do it at the start of tomorrow. And it's like, no, I need to reconsider that. Why don't I just take 5 minutes now and sit down and do it?
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
do you
it's,
think that
yeah.
actually getting to that point, because that conversation can create a lot of internal conflict because it's like there's the other little voice in there going, nah, don't do it now. You don't need to do that now. No, let's go over here. And then the voice that's saying,
Mhm.
we are doing it now. And I suppose in coaching, I speak with clients about how we become attached to that voice in our brain as though it is in command, that's the command center. When in fact, our brain is a machine. It's churning and it thinks, let's do the easy route. Let's go the easy route because it wants to conserve energy. That's what it does. And it's allowing your voice, and I hear that very loudly with you, is that intention, making conscious choices, that allowing that voice get stronger over time to be able to say, no, we are doing it now.
Exactly. And that's a lot of practice and something I'm still not very good at, but I have my moments. And a lot of, saying to someone else that you're going to do something, or saying something out loud that you're going to do it to make it more real, I guess. I saw a brilliant tweet some time ago that always stuck with me. It was um free will is the enemy of ADHD, and that really resonated with me because you read all like the things where it's like, okay, I'll say to myself, if I do this now, and then I'll do the nice thing. And my brain goes, but why don't you just do the nice thing now? So it's being able to sort of recognize that brain wanting to take the easy route just because it can, or do I take the easy route because I feel burnt out and I need a break? And finding that differentiation between them is definitely something that I've had to try find.
Yeah, and as you say, you said in there, it's practice. It's starting, and you're only, we're only 2025, so we're only, 2.5, 3 years in. It's a journey and it does take time, but it's building that awareness and then the acceptance that that's what you need to do, and then starting to put in the supports for yourself to start to do it. And you said, that saying out loud or saying it to a friend, you just don't do ADHD alone.
Exactly.
It's independent
Exactly.
is vital, and so going externalizing things, even though we're fiercely independent beings,
Yeah.
you know,
Even, yeah, like I find even if I write things down, it's feels more cemented, whereas I, could be sitting there and thinking about my day and I'll be like, I need to do X, Y, and Z. And then 10 minutes later, my brain completely forgets and I wake up the next morning like, so it's definitely
getting
like
it out.
finding that accountability and remembering.
Yeah, yeah. And so Do you want to move on to your next slide?
Yeah, like so coming to terms with living in a world that wasn't made to facilitate how my brain operates, which, you know, I think that applies again, like largely to what I'm doing in the workplace too, where, my brain personally comes alive at night. Um, so if I'm, doing a 9 to 5, those up until 12, my brain is still in the but I'm tired mode, and it's not, fully awake and ready to work. And I feel I'm quite lucky in that I'm able to set my own schedule to an extent of
Mm,
working within those bounds. But a lot of the time, you're not being able to do that. It's, you have to be in at 9, you have to leave at 5, and that's quite difficult. And the setup of, like workplaces and college where it's like, okay, but if you're sat in a 2 hour meeting, I need to get up and move, or else I'm not, taking in anything after 40 minutes.
yeah, yeah. And it's finding the strategies that will work for you to do that. Environment is absolutely crucial. So I guess we can't always control the environment that we're going to be in or expected to be able to cope with in the same way that perhaps other people may, and that's okay. Um, but it's very much about trying to manage that energy, looking at our evenings before, if we know we've got to be 9 a.m. or we know we're consistently 9 a.m., managing energy and sleep. And that's challenging for many people, particularly when that night owl really comes alive in us, right?
Exactly, exactly. And, um, that managing, if you have to be somewhere and it's 9 a.m., being able to have that support from someone where they can help you along with that. Or sometimes when I need to get up early and I'm really in that period of like struggling with things, my best friend, who is a real early bird, he will give me a call, and I'll have that accountability that I have to answer, and I have to tell him that I'm out of bed and getting up and doing those things. So we'll do that for a set amount of time until I establish that routine.
Right. Okay. And that's again, it's that accountability and interdependence. I mean, that's what's coming through loud and clear here, right? That's, you can't do this solo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it takes a lot to, be able to say to someone, I really need your help with this. And it's, I guess, important to keep at the forefront of your mind to do that, to maintain the good habits you've picked up rather than letting yourself get into that burnout before you reach out for help, and letting things, get to a bad point, which I do find myself doing as well, because it is difficult, but I'm slowly learning to be able to have those maintenance reach outs as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, really important. And that's growing that self-awareness is so important because so often we're in our heads. It's like ADHD, like we live from here up, and it's all the time doing, 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 or thinking, or, within our heads, and that disconnect, even realizing that actually we're feeling tired, we're hungry, we're thirsty, we're not breathing, we're kind of getting frazzled. It's starting to build that awareness about ourselves is crucial because that's the foundation and the stepping stone into being able to function in the way that we want to and show up. And I can see here, in terms of the, of what actually happened for you, and that's really the coming to terms. And there's huge financial pressures then because the supports that you want to reach out for, unfortunately, cost. And then, you mentioned there, those feelings of doubt and was I faking it? And that's that accepting this is who I am.
Exactly. Yeah, it's I think with, how much I was, in the research of ADHD, and then also how topical ADHD is,
Mm.
that, I would always find myself being um like, oh, maybe I just know too much about it, and maybe I've just applied them to myself and they're not true. And I have a point every single time where I'm in that realm of thinking where I do something that is actually, just when you look at it, really, really funny, that I there's nothing it could be attributed to other than ADHD.
It's funny, but it's also it can be very much in our thought processes as well, right? Of how we'll start at one place and then have moved around and gone all sorts of squiggly ways to get to a final point and keeping people coming on board with us, whereas our brain is just working so actively all the time that
Mhm.
just go to these great places quickly. And yeah, other people can find that hard to keep up with. Um, and therein lies, the creativity. Um, yeah. So what do you have next for us?
I think this is my last one. Clearly, I had a lot of feelings after I was got my diagnosis. I think the struggling to tell people at the start, and that as well, along with the ADHD stigma. And yeah, I think especially in the workplace, that's a difficult thing to do because it's not, you don't know how people are going to react to that. You have that fear, and I think especially with like the feelings of doubt and then that sort of like shame you can feel, it amplifies how negative you think things will be. I think I'm in a very lucky position as well with my workplace, where everyone has just been fantastic and so understanding and have adapted things for me when I need them, um, which has been totally great, and something that I guess, a lot of people would have that fear of what's going to happen after I say it. Will I be thought of differently?
Yeah, and that is so important because having that psychological safety is absolutely crucial, and having it in the workplace is vital and is lacking, unfortunately, in many workplaces, is really lacking. But it's psychological safety outside of that as well, in family and in friends. And often what we do hear are people who have been diagnosed, late diagnosed, and they recognize a parent and who may now be an elderly parent has ADHD. And they're dismissive of, they don't want either to, highlight that to the parent, or the parent because of perceptions about how the parent may perceive that, or siblings. So that can present challenges. Yeah. And then also among friends, it's choosing the friends that will support you to get that psychological safety is really important.
Absolutely. I think with my family as well, I struggled to tell them. And I think that was a lot of like in my own head, especially with my parents, because, as a kid growing up, I'd, put all of this academic pressure on myself, and I'd want to do well and like have them be proud of me in that aspect. And I think like a lot of, the sort of stereotypes and the stigma of ADHD are, okay, well, if you're in school and you're not going to do well because you can't focus or you can't think. But the reality is you can focus on things that are interesting or important to you. And that was important to me. So I think telling them that, I felt like telling them that I got a diagnosis, I felt it was going to be met with, but you were great in school. You can't possibly have ADHD, or I didn't want them to feel like that they'd overlooked something,
Mm.
or I wanted it to be looked at as a good thing of now I know.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes you've got to help people to bring them on that journey and prepare yourself for those conversations. and you may need to prepare yourself with somebody else, because again, if you go back into your own head and rely on yourself to have that dialogue, those stories of the shame and the guilt, and also with ADHD we bring enormous empathy, and I'm hearing that hugely there, your concern for how they will feel. Did they do a good job or did they let you down? That we've got to manage that, right? So it's also, we don't do ADHD alone. If you get a diagnosis, tell a friend, find that psychological safety, find that safe person you can confide in, that you can talk
Mhm.
this through with, and then work out your plan for how you're going to bring this to other people. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, and in my case, I found that sometimes they will do that for you. So to expect the unexpected, I told my dad because he's very, chilled out, relaxed. He'd be like, "Oh, okay." Definitely, if I was to suspect someone from where I got this from, it'd be that man. But I I told him and I was really, like nervous about it and I was like opening up and I was like, "Oh, I don't like this." And I was like, "I'm scared to tell like mom and I'm worried about that reaction." And then didn't I get home that day, I walk in and she goes to me, "So your dad tells me you've ADHD?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I wasn't prepared for this. That wasn't the time." So do expect the unexpected. But you know what? It took off that it gave me that relief that I wasn't circling the disastrous conversation that I made up in my mind, and that was just fine.
That you made up in your mind. We make,
Exactly.
because we've got to remember with ADHD, it's phenomenally creative. So it can be creative in a way that doesn't help us, right? And go off in these imaginary conversations and imaginary outcomes. And
Exactly.
it's having a great time entertaining itself, your brain,
Yeah.
but the reality may be something completely
Yeah.
different.
And I always find that, my brain always gets creative in the negative sense. So sometimes I go to myself, okay, but what happens if it is positive? Like we need to look at both sides of that as well. And
And
yeah, the reminder of that.
yeah, and that is what's really important, is that separation, that realizing your brain is just that, it's a machine and it's going off doing what it does and taking easy routes, and having those imaginary conversations because it's entertaining itself and keeping going with a narrative. But that gut, that voice that you're hearing, that's has to over time become stronger, over time with practice, and be able to have those rational conversations with yourself.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I
Okay.
always have to remind myself
Do you
that,
want
yeah,
to, are you finished? Do you want to stop sharing there? And maybe
yeah,
with,
perfect.
I suppose what would be wonderful is just to get the last few takeouts from you, having now gone through this journey with your diagnosis. And I think it's wonderful, and thank you so much for sharing this journey, because it's not all, butterflies and rainbows once you find out, and great, now I know, but it is now what?
Hmm.
And that now what is a journey that requires reflection, awareness about yourself, acceptance, and some compassion. And even the way in which you've told this story, and when I saw you at the conference speaking, you could just tell you'd a lot of compassion and kindness for yourself, and that's needed first. It's needed first. And then to be able to navigate and find that safety of who you're going to talk to and who you will confide in, and environments. And as you said, we're not, it's situationally variable, right? Sometimes those traits are bigger than others, and it's recognizing that. So from this journey, are there any other, I guess, pearls of wisdom things that you feel have worked for you?
Um, I think it would be any of the additional supports I utilized, which was, it is are brilliant and they even help with routine. Um, if you have, something on that you have to go to, that really helped me if that's a possibility for some people, which it isn't always. But there's lots of great um things that I've done that, the little tips and tricks that you can do and all, the different um like routines and calendars and tasks and to-do lists and stuff that you can do. And I think my, headspace is always like, okay, I'll find the right one and that'll be it, and then my life will be changed. Um, but I have, come to terms with the acceptance that doing these things is also that little dopamine hit. So if I find something that works for me for a week and then I fall off with it, I'm allowed to pick something new, and that might work for me then as well. So I think the understanding that, things are going to change and not having that idealized, okay, I'll do this one thing and I'm going to be brilliant. Like you're having those highs and those lows throughout, but sort of maintaining that compassion for you that when you feel like good, you can do things to start having like a good routine or start doing things that will help you feel better or help you maintain things when you hit a low. Um, to then when you hit that low, allow yourself that sort of compassion and reach out to actually talk to people and let them know how you're doing rather than, which I found myself doing a lot, putting on that brave face and being like, everything's fine and we're all grand. And to stop me even putting on that face, I, banned everyone in my life from asking me about like the PhD and how work was going. But obviously, then in the end, if things aren't going well or you feel bad, that's spilling over. So keeping that open line of communication.
So communicating, bringing people in, being honest with people, not putting on the front of everything is fantastic. If it's not, if you're feeling tired, I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling a bit wrecked at the moment. And also, what I was hearing you saying, of which there's a lot of self-judgment placed on this idealized perception that we are supposed to be able to stick to one system, have one system and stick to that system, and that's going to keep me going. And you're going to have this line that it's always going to be like this. The reality of ADHD, because part and parcel of how we're wired, is our energy goes up and down. It's, as we were saying, it's a squiggly line. It's
Yeah.
not a straight line. What we want to see in terms of progress of being able to become more adaptive and resilient is, yes, we want to see a graph that's doing this,
Mhm.
upholding our mornings, our routines, our executive functions doing this, but accepting the line can do this in between. But on average, we're achieving this. And not having judgment of ourselves, but having the strategies to pick yourself up when you've gone down here. Who do I call that actually reminds me and gives me the boost? Or what is it I need to do to get
Mhm.
myself back up? And so strategies.
Exactly. Like routines and tasks get boring. If you get bored of it and you're not doing it, do a new one. Like keep
Or a
keep
different
that,
way.
make it fun. Make it like, don't make it that, oh, I have to do this. Make
Mm.
it cool.
Oh, I love it. Well, this has been cool. So thank you so, so much, Abby. I'm sure your story is just wonderful. The irony within it, I find hilarious. Um, but I think it's really helpful for people to get the reality of what that diagnosis and the now what afterwards. I think that's superb. And it doesn't have to be all perfect. This is journey over time, and we learn for what works for ourselves with support, with giving ourselves accountability, psychological safety, and permission to do it our way, and permission to say no when something's not working as well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and so thank you so, so much. And then we'll be doing more of these, and I'll be doing another one on burnout, which is, I know, also a topic that you know well. I think everybody
Mhm.
knows well about. So that will be really interesting. So thank you so, so much. That was great.
Thanks so much, Yvonne. I'm excited to binge them all while I'm procrastinating.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay.